This course is for translators and proofreaders alike. If you're an aspiring proofreader, welcome. If you're a translator who's already watched the Intro to Translation video, welcome back. If you have not watched it, by the way, make sure you do. Proofreading is part of every translator's job, but proofreaders are not expected to do any translation. A lot of people are dismissive of proofreading or don't really understand it involves more than checking for spelling mistakes. The actual task of proofreading does involve checking for spelling mistakes, but extends to every other area of creative writing as well. Assisting the translator as a proofreader involves reviewing the script and making suggestions to improve style, make it sound more natural, clearer, and read better in English. In this guide, we will be reviewing spelling and grammar checking, tense errors, subject errors, structure errors, stylistic concerns, as well as some eccentricities of the comic book format we need to be accounting for. With regards to spelling and grammar checking, you need to do more than run your script through grammar checks. Have a native English speaker review everything, and put that C in high school English to good use. English grammar can be stupid, and the correct thing that sounds natural to us English speakers might not be logical, or line up with what gets suggested by Google's grammar checker. Or, God forbid, Grammarly. Don't use Grammarly. Make sure you come to an agreement with your team for what dialect of English you're going to use for the purposes of your fan translation. There are differences from set phrases to the way you spell words, to entire words that are conveyed in different ways from across different dialects, and will be totally foreign to some speaker somewhere. Make sure you know what dialect you'll follow beforehand. Tense errors are very common in the work of amateur JPTN translators, and mainly translators whose second language is English. Because Japanese has a much simpler tense structure than English, the most prevalent errors of grammar and scanlation relate to tense. I know long-time English learners can struggle with tenses. I've even seen native speakers without much education struggle on one or two occasions, so it's quite understandable. This is where having a PR that is a native English speaker really comes in handy. If your group's TL is not a native English speaker and prone to making errors of tense, the English native PR has a good chance of noticing most of the errors and offering corrections. Consult this tense chart here, it's a pretty good example. If you need more help in tenses, Google is your friend. Use only one tense per sentence, and try to convey the main point of the sentence as plainly as possible, unless a similar error is present in the raw. Subject errors, on the contrary to tense errors, are not unheard of in the work of JPTN translators who are native English speakers but still new to Japanese. Japanese often omits the subject from the starts of sentences, and the listener relies on the context of the conversation to determine the subject of the sentence. Instead of saying, "Did you go to the supermarket yesterday?" for example, a Japanese speaker might say, "Kino wa suppa ni ikimashita ka?" which means, "Did you go to the supermarket yesterday?" That sentence does not contain a subject, you, but still communicates that the speaker intends the sentence subject be the listener because the sentence is posed as a question. It's pretty clear in this example, but in other complicated circumstances, particularly with multiple characters on screen, or it's not clear who a bubble points to, that sort of thing, a very inexperienced translator, or even a moderately experienced translator, could reasonably experience some confusion and might not be able to tell who the subject is, which might result in a line where the you a character is referring to actually means oneself or someone else entirely, so keep this in mind. Structural errors, as you may have guessed, are errors arising from the actual structure of the sentence. In English, we have an SVO word order, which means the subject of the sentence comes before the verb, which comes before other grammar items like the object. Japanese, on the other hand, uses an SOV word order, subject, object, verb. While an English speaker might say, "I want to go fish today," a Japanese speaker might say, "Kyou wa tsuritai." If you just translate the actual words, irrespective of the grammar, while the Japanese does mean, "I want to go fish today," the structure of the Japanese sentence is different than the English sentence. today fishing I want to go. So an error I will very occasionally see, not often, but very occasionally, is a sentence that sounds unnatural in English because it's been constructed like a Japanese sentence. So make sure your sentences follow the English word order. Another factor worth considering is the actual stylistic components of the text. Using incorrect grammar can be a choice writers make, but it's a choice people making a translation should only make if the original text has some sort of intentional grammatical error or imperfection. Similarly, with accents, it's better to use an accent you're very familiar with than an accent that might fit convention better. For example, if you've got a delinquent character who speaks with a Kansai dialect, and you've observed a lot of other translators equate the Kansai dialect with a Southern United States dialect, it would be better to write in a dialect you, as the translator and or proofreader, are more familiar with, and associate with delinquents or hoodlums and such like, than try to affect an accent you only tenuously understand. Try not to use the same word over and over again, especially in the same bubble, unless an equivalent word is overplayed for effect in the original text. Seeing the word just 3 times in a bubble or page might just make your readers want to jump off a fucking bridge. There are better ways to phrase your sentences than just saying fuck it and spamming just. Just saying just is just lazy. No two ways about it. Try to get rid of unnecessary eccentricities. If you've got a sentence or bubble that drags on and on with a bunch of complex, flowery language and the raw doesn't put on a similar effect, revise it. You should always be looking to revise away anything that disrupts the easy flow of reading, unless the raw was similarly disjointed. Try to reread your text a few times and make notes on the side before committing to any revisions. Once you've committed to revisions, repeat until you're completely satisfied with the results. The translation needs to be balanced between accurate and faithful to the raw in terms of actual meaning, as opposed to technical correctness. But also needs to read good in English. Good luck with that. If you're not confident in something, don't be afraid to rewrite it in a way that you think looks good in English and add a TL or PR note. Sometimes it's the only way. Remember that your discretion is what's writing this thing, so you do what you think is right. A couple sentences, or about 20 words, is the normal size for English comic bubbles. Don't keep this advice too close to heart, since these are Japanese comics we're translating and we're not original writers, but it's worth knowing. Any number under than 20 should be spelled out instead of represented numerically. Always add dashes between names and Japanese honorifics, Reader-chan. Use 2 dashes to indicate a character's speech is interrupted between bubbles, or just interrupted at all. 2 dashes should also be used to substitute semicolons. We don't use those in American comics, and if you're writing in American English, you shouldn't either. 3 dots, also called ellipsis, can be used at the end of a sentence to end a sentence. Including additional punctuation on top of an ellipsis is stupid. Looks dumb. If you're going to use an ellipsis and another item of punctuation additionally for emphasis, just omit the ellipsis entirely. Ellipses can also be used to indicate speech trails off as well. And with that, you're ready to review translations. Proofreading is up there with redrawing as the most difficult and unappreciated part of scanlation when done right, but very noticeable and objectionable when not done properly. Good luck on your proofreading journey. I salute you. Next lesson is a storytime reading of the elements of style, and some long dead, whatever fucking ancient English, blah blah blah. This explains the English lore. It's complicated. I've sort of summarized it, taken notes. I'll give you the bare bones of what you need to know, of the bare bones of what you need to know. Like all the other guides, when available, you can listen along to my reading of it on YouTube, read it on MangaDex, or follow the link to the Libre ebook version of the full text from the Gutenberg Project website. Been a long day. Thank you for watching, If you're a translator, make sure you go to the translation guide first before you go to the next writing in English guide. Trust me. Just do it, alright? I know it might not seem the most appealing right now. Just do it, please. Oh my god, you'll thank yourself later. Ugh. Fuck, I'm tired. Alright, I'm turning this shit off.